This story happened to me not too long ago in the winter. I worked with my mother-in-law in an organization, and she had a friend there named Eleanor. Eleanor was in her late 50s at the time, but despite her age, she was very slender, about 5 feet 7 inches tall. In short, she was still quite attractive. At that time, Eleanor's husband had recently left her. They had lived together for many years, and she was in a bit of a daze, trying to adjust to the new reality. Over time, however, she gradually came to her senses and began to behave with the same confidence that had probably defined her before. Sometimes my mother-in-law and I would talk about Eleanor. Of course, I was not the initiator of these conversations, but I picked up on small, intriguing details of her life. Eleanor had been born in another city, married and moved to London. From what I understood, she'd always had a thing for men. There was something magnetic about her that seemed to have no trouble attracting attention. Like any normal young man, even though I was married and only 22 years old, I couldn't help but notice her charms. She was attractive, and there was an undeniable energy about her that was hard not to notice. The way she held herself, even after all she had been through, was mesmerizing. One day my mother-in-law announced that Eleanor would be joining us for Christmas dinner. My wife, Emily, was excited to have someone to chat with and drink wine with. When Christmas came, the doorbell rang and I greeted her. "Hi, Eleanor," I said. "Hello, David," she replied cheerfully, her voice warm and lively. She was wearing a festive red coat and scarf, and her cheeks were slightly flushed from the cold outside. We all gathered in the living room, chatting, laughing, and of course drinking. The room was filled with the smell of mulled wine, the glow of fairy lights and soft Christmas music playing in the background. As the evening wore on, my wife Emily, feeling the effects of the wine, went to bed early. My mother-in-law then asked me to walk Eleanor home, as she lived only a kilometer away and had too much to drink to make it on her own. Eleanor was a confident woman, and under the influence of alcohol, she was not shy in her expressions. As we walked, the night was crisp and quiet, the snow crunching under our boots. She turned to me with a playful smile. "So, David, how's married life treating you?" she asked in a teasing tone. "It's fine, Eleanor," I replied cautiously. "Fine?" she repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Have you cheated on Emily yet?" "No, of course not," I said, laughing nervously. I see," she said with a sly grin. "Well, there's always a first time for everything." Her words hung in the air as we continued walking. By then we had already approached her building. She was looking at me with a strange scrutiny, her eyes glittering in the dim light of the street lamp. "But do you want to come in for tea, or are you going straight home?" "I'll come in for a bit to warm up," I said, unable to resist her alluring gaze. As soon as we stepped inside, Eleanor closed the door and kissed me. Her perfume was intoxicating, a mixture of jasmine and something musky that made me dizzy. I couldn't resist. I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her to me. "You're bad, Eleanor," I whispered, feeling the weight of what we were doing but unable to stop. "Then punish me," she teased, her voice low and seductive. She led me to her bedroom where things escalated quickly. The room was cozy, lit only by the soft light of the bedside lamp and filled with the scent of her perfume. I didn't linger after that. I knew I couldn't risk arousing suspicion at home. Before leaving, we exchanged numbers and she kissed me goodbye, saying, "Call me whenever you want." Walking home, I told myself it wouldn't happen again. I had a wife, and Eleanor was a friend of my mother-in-law. But after a few days, I couldn't get rid of the memory of her. Something inside me stirred and I dialed her number. I went to see her again, and again a week later. Each time on the way home, guilt gnawed at me, but the pull to see her was stronger. Eleanor had a way of making me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt before. She was bold, spontaneous, and incredibly seductive. The moments we spent together were intoxicating, filled with passion and the thrill of mystery. We laughed, shared stories, and explored an unspoken bond that grew deeper with each meeting. Before I knew it, our romance had been going on for over 6 months. What started as a fleeting moment of weakness turned into something I had no way of stopping. I thought of her often, even when I was at home with Emily. The contrast between the life I shared with my wife and the life I led with Eleanor was stark. It was as if I were living in 2 different worlds, both of which seemed equally real and impossible to escape.